Hi, John. I think it's just a coaster.
So your microphones are on mute. To use them, push it out. Yeah. Did you hear that, John? I said that. Your microphone's currently muted. To use it, just push the button. Did you catch that, right? Yeah. Please push that. It's very important for all of you. Live.
What's that? No, when you want to talk, you push it up. So it's on.
I got you.
Yep.
Hello and welcome. I'm Maureen Miller, the President and CEO of the Clinton Area Chamber of Commerce, and I welcome you all here tonight for our 2020 Candidates Forum. This forum is sponsored by the Clinton Area Chamber of Commerce and the DeWitt Chamber and Development Corporation. We'll be fielding candidates, giving candidates questions tonight, and then we will also be doing this again next Thursday night in DeWitt, same time at the DeWitt Community Center. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dave Pillars, who will explain some of the rules and get the show on the road.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you all for attending, candidates and everyone in the audience and everyone watching on TV. So set the ground rules. All the candidates have been invited, and those that choose to participate have been given the broad issues that we'll be discussing tonight, but they have not seen the questions that we asked today. We're going to begin by offering each of the candidates an opportunity to make an introductory statement. They'll be limited to 2 minutes for that statement. We'll then proceed into the questions, and each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Once we've completed the questions, then we will give them each 1 minute to make a closing statement. And then I reserve the right at any time to change the question and even follow up on any of the questions that we ask. So we'll begin tonight. Eric Van Lanker, the current auditor, is here today. He's running unopposed. We're going to give him an opportunity to make a statement. Mr. Van Lanker?
Thanks, Dave, and thanks to everyone who has set up this evening of discussion. I am Eric Van Lanker, Clinton County Auditor and Commissioner of Elections. It's been my honor to serve Clinton County taxpayers and voters in that capacity for the last 12 years, and I look forward to continue to serve with honesty and integrity for the next 4 years. As I don't have an opponent, I would like to just throw away that usual campaign speech and take this opportunity to talk for a couple minutes to the voters in Clinton County about the upcoming November 5th general election. Obviously, there's been a big push for absentee voting, for people to vote at home due to the COVID-19 pandemic and other reasons. And I understand everyone's receiving a lot of absentee ballot requests sent to their home. Just so you know, you only need to turn in one request, and then you don't have to turn in the rest of them. If you're interested, if my office has received your request, give us a call. That number is 563-244-0568, and we'll let you know if we've received your absentee ballot request yet. Or you can also reach out to us through email. You can either email anyone in my office. You can also message us through the ClintonCountyElections.com website. There's a way to contact us there, and you can ask that way if we've received your absentee ballot request form. Another good way to track that is on the Iowa Secretary of State's website. If you click on there and on the home page on the right-hand side, there's a series of links, and there's one there called Track Your Absentee Ballot. Once you click on that and you enter your information, it will tell you if my office has processed your absentee ballot request form. And later on, as we go through the process, you will actually be able to track your absentee ballot, when it was sent out to you and when it's been returned to my office. Some of you have turned in your requests several weeks ago already, and we appreciate that. That's going to help us plan for this large election coming up. But we want voters to know that ballots cannot be sent out until October 5th. So Clinton County voters, if you've sent in your absentee ballot request form, look in your mailboxes the week of October 5th, and you should find your ballots there. So ballots can be returned by mail, or they can be dropped off in the Clinton County Auditor's office at the Clinton County Administration Building at 1900 North 3rd Street in Clinton. There is also a drop box there just off the parking lot at the Clinton County Administration Building that can be used for absentee ballot drop-off. I'd like to address the polling locations for this general election. As you know, we had to use abbreviated polling locations in the primary. We are working very hard to have several polling locations open for the general election. Right now, we are working very hard on figuring out what that looks like. It's coming down to a matter of, do we have enough poll workers, and where can we send those poll workers? We are also trying to find polling places also that are large enough that will accommodate social distancing during this time of pandemic. But do keep an eye on that ClintonCountyElections.com website. That's where we'll have updates. We will also you can also follow us on Facebook, Clinton County Elections, also Clinton County Elections on Twitter. And this year we'll also be using the Where You Vote app, the mobile app that you can download on your phone or tablet. And that app is very simple to use. You open it up, you put in your address, and it shows you where your polling location is at. And you can also use it for your coworkers or family if they have questions about where they need to vote. In-person voting, in-person absentee voting also starts on October 5th. So on October 5th, you can come to the Clinton County Administration Building and cast an absentee ballot. That opportunity will be there up through the Monday before the election, and it'll be during our regular business hours at the County Administration Building. But we will also be open for 2 Saturdays before the election as well for an opportunity to vote in-person absentee. We will also do our satellite voting location in DeWitt, as we have traditionally done during general elections. So you will be able to vote at the Clinton County Satellite Office in DeWitt, 3 dates. 2 of them are Saturdays, October 17th and October 24th, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we'll be there on a Wednesday, October 21st, from 1 to 6:30 p.m. Also, voters who have ballots that were sent to them that they could vote at home, if they wish, they can also drop those off while we're running that DeWitt satellite time. They can also drop those off if they wish. Whether you decide to vote in the safety of your home, or you come and vote in person early, or you vote on election day, we will count your ballot. All right? Please be comfortable with that. And please be comfortable with how you want to vote. And then just ultimately, please vote. And when you vote in the general election on November 3rd, I would also appreciate very much your vote for Van Lanker for Clinton County Auditor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Lanker. We'll now begin the question session. We'll start with the state legislature. We have 2 House races going on. Sorry. Our first race, we have incumbent Mary Wolf. Challenging her is Joma Short. Our other race, we have incumbent Norland Momsen. He's to my right, and then his challenger is Ryan Zeski. So we'll begin with our first question. We'll ask that, we'll start with your opening statements. We'll ask that you limit those to more about your background and qualifications. We'll start with Joma Short.
My background and qualifications. Okay, well, hello. Yes, my name is Joma Short, like he said, and I am running opposing Mary. I have a pretty extensive and eclectic background. When I went to school, I got my undergrad and my BA. with a blended major of adolescent psychology and counseling, and then also in theology and biblical languages with an emphasis in Hebrew. So I do have a background in ministry, and then I also do nonprofit work. And so in the United States and overseas, I've been in war-torn countries, and I help rebuild fallen infrastructures. And I've done that, and I focused on rehabilitating not just cities, but then also adolescents and young people as well, helping with the trauma, and then holistic relief and development as far as recreation, sports leagues, and then mentoring, education. We've started schools, and our schools actually became the #1 schools in the nation. That was in Sierra Leone. But since being back in the United States, I've been in Clinton for 2.5, almost 3 years now. I'm a substitute teacher with the school district. I love teenagers, so I work at the high school and at the Alternative High School Gateway Learning Center. And besides that, I started the Upper Room, which is a nonprofit, but it's a Christ-centered creative and performing arts center. We do music lessons, dance lessons, worship and prayer. And then besides that, we also do different events for the community. And so that's who I am, but I'm running, and I feel like I have an extensive skill set between working with government, working with business leaders, working with entrepreneurs and families and children, and I believe that I can really be a great representative for Clinton County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Ms. Wolf?
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, both here in the chamber and also at home. It's a really exciting election we're going to have, so I really appreciate the fact that so many people are getting involved this year. A little bit about myself. I grew up here in Clinton County. I went to Clinton grade school, graduated from Clinton High School, went out to the University of Iowa, graduated from there. In 1992, after graduating from the University of Iowa Law School, I came back here to Clinton to practice law with my dad, Jack Wolf, and to raise my family, which basically consists of my son, John. So I did that for about 15, 18 years. Worked a lot with criminal justice issues and also family law. Then in 2010, Polly Bukta, who had been our state representative for 14 years, decided to retire, and she reached out and asked me if I'd run. And I thought about it, talked to my family, and decided to go for it, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. Since then, I have served in the state legislature. I serve on the Ag Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, which deals with all things tax related, the Government Oversight Committee, and I'm the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, which has the highest volume of bills, and usually very controversial bills, of any other committee. So I work super hard out there. I try and vet every single bill in my committee and all of the agriculture bills. I've learned a lot. I do my best to talk to my constituents, talk with them, not at them, and most of all, listen to them. So I am excited about another term. I think there's a lot we can do for Clinton County. Looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Mr. Momsen?
Thank you, Mr. Pillars. My name is Norland Mumson. I'm a lifelong resident of Clinton County. I farm the Century Family Farm up by Miles. It's right on the county line, but I'm still in Clinton County. My wife and I have 5 kids and 4 grandchildren. On the farm, I raise corn, beans, alfalfa, and feed out cattle. I graduated from East Central High School, and now it's called Easton Valley, so it's changed 3 times since it was Miles when I started, came East Central and Easton Valley. So after graduating, I attended Iowa State. I participated in the 2-year farm operation program. I'm presently serving in the Iowa House as the representative for House District 97. Out there, I am on the Agriculture Committee, the Natural Resources Committee, the Education Committee, the Full Appropriations Committee, and I'm also chairman of the Ag and Natural Resources Sub-Appropriations Committee in the House. And I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Momsen. Mr. Momsen. Mr. Zeski?
Good evening, and thanks everybody for being here. It's nice to see such a big audience. My name is Ryan Zeski. I'm originally born here in the Midwest. I grew up in the Quad City area, After high school, I left for the United States Navy and joined for 4.5 years of active duty. As a reservist, I served aboard the Rock Island Arsenal for 1.5 years. I was fortunate thereafter to meet my now wife, Amanda. We have 2 lovely sons, Miles and Sawyer, who might be watching at home. Hi, guys. I'm a first-time candidate. My government experience is only based on my military. However, I do have life experience that I think is important in this race right now. I believe that 2020 is a race that is going to be unique in American history, and I know my sons are going to read about it. So I wanted to do my best to perform the most that I could to the capacity that I could. And in this case, I've decided that I want to be a candidate for Iowa House Representative in District 97. Some of the other things that I've done in my life were after Hurricane Katrina, I moved down to New Orleans and helped with disaster relief efforts down there. I'm quite proud of that. And I feel that besides the military and besides moving to New Orleans to help with that disaster relief effort, this is sort of my 3rd call to service in my lifetime. So I look forward to the questions tonight. I appreciate you guys all being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. We'll now start the questions, and we're basically going to rotate who begins. We're going to basically rotate who begins with the first answer. We'll start with Ms. Wolf, and then we'll work our way around. So, question number 1. The legislature has consistently considered, and in many cases has shifted the funding of mandates to the counties as a method to help balance the state budget. This has put a tremendous burden on the county's boards and their budgets. If the legislature proposes to shift more mandates and costs to the counties, what will be your position and why?
Well, that's an excellent question. That does happen a lot, and I want to thank our county supervisors because when those bills come up, I reach out to them, and all 3 of them have done a great job of getting back to me, sharing their feelings about it. Same thing with Eric Van Lanker, our county auditor. I have opposed, for the most part, bills that shift costs. I oppose the 2012 mental health redo because that clearly was shifting a huge amount of money, a huge amount of expenses to our county and wasn't funding it. So, you know, I can't say I will never vote for a bill that cost shifts because a lot of them do, some more than others, but it isn't something that the state should do, and it's certainly something that I do my best to avoid. I will say that both sides probably do it. We have seen quite a bit of it during 1 minute. I thought we only got 1 minute to answer the question. Oh, we get 2 minutes to answer the question. That's so exciting. I thought we only had 1. Well, in that case, this past session, we had a bill that basically imposed some new regulations on our county supervisors when they wanted to pass certain types of bills on the county supervisor level. And I talked to them about this. I looked at the rationale behind the bill, and certainly it seemed clear to all of us that there was no good reason to add those extra hoops for them to jump through. It would have cost our county extra money, so I voted no. So again, most of the time I do vote no. I'm sure there are some where I vote yes, but we have enough problems with our own budgets. You don't need the state of Iowa pushing more obligations on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Ms. Short.
Yeah, can you please restate the question?
Certainly. The legislature has consistently considered and in many cases has shifted the funding of mandates to the counties as a method to help balance the state budget. This has put a tremendous burden on the county boards and their budgets. If the legislature proposes to shift more mandates and costs to the counties, what would be your position and why?
Yes, my position is that I think that's a great idea because I think that each county is specific, and I think that the people who are elected, like our supervisors and the county board, they would know what's most appropriate for their county. And I think that with issues of property taxes, like the state legislators, we don't oversee. Well, I'm speaking in the future, but the state legislators don't oversee the property taxes. That's local, and that's the school board. And I think that's rightfully so. But once elected for myself, I would love to, and I do plan to work with the local government to make sure that everything is fair. I really believe in transparency so that there's accountability, so that we know if there's assessments happening, property values increase, et cetera. Like, well, then what's happening with that money? How is that affecting the local taxpayers? So if there was an issue, I definitely would be all ears to hear if people had any problems, but I'm pretty confident in our local government to do a great job with it. I will definitely work with them. But besides that, I don't think Clinton County has an issue with TIFs or just not fair like appropriations and how we deal with the property taxes versus the homeowners versus a business. But I think it would be a smooth transition, and I'm all for it. And I think that would be good for Clinton County.
Thank you, Ms. Short.
Thanks.
Mr. Zeski.
Thank you. I guess I'd have to confer with Mary Wolf about this. I think it's a case-by-case basis, and rolling it down to the smallest component isn't always the answer. I liken it to the current mask situation. I noticed a number of us are wearing masks tonight. Sometimes you need the top of the government to lead on these things, so to abdicate and to push things down to the local level. I'd want to be able to look at that very closely before I agree to do anything like that. Also, going back to the school boards, as Ms. Short just mentioned, the local level can do everything that they possibly can to get ready, like a return to school, like we saw over the summer. Many of us have children, many of us know teachers in the area. If the state decides that they're going to change their tune and then revoke the authority that they gave to counties, in that case school boards, it creates turmoil. So I would want to look at each one individually. I wouldn't want to make a blanket statement either way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. Mr. Momsen.
Thank you. This question is much more complex than a lot of people realize, and a lot more complex than I realized when I first ran. Many cases, there are issues where the state moves something that they funded or took care of onto the counties, and that needs to be funded. But then there's other issues, and I can take a couple examples, like schools. There was a reading program where studies show that students that can't read by third grade are at a disadvantage the rest of their school time, and so there was a push to make sure children read, and there was a conflict whether, and the state required that if students weren't able to read at a certain level, they had to go to summer school or receive extra help. Many schools thought that was an unfunded mandate. If schools aren't required to teach or paid to or given money to teach kids to read, I'm not sure what they're receiving funding for. Another incident, the state was wanting passed for consumer literacy, so kids would know how to count money and things like that. There's several school districts in our area here that teach that as part of their curriculum, and other ones that don't. Well, the ones that don't, it's an unfunded mandate. Well, I think like counting money out and things like that should be taught at school, and I think it's for the state to have to require that and have a mandate. I think it shouldn't happen to begin with. So,
Thank you, Mr. Momsen. All right, we'll move on to question number 2, and we'll begin with Ms. Short. Several years ago, the legislature rewrote Chapter 20, which is the collective bargaining statute for public employees, and they retain the rights to bargain for public safety officers, but for non-public safety officers, they only allowed them to bargain as to wages. Do you believe that public workers should be able to bargain on more issues than just wages? And if so, what issues?
Thank you. I do. I can't make a blanket statement about it again, but I would say that public workers should be able to bargain with other issues. But I know that Iowa is a right to work state, and I love that Iowa is a right to work state. and I believe that we should stay like that. I think that should remain the case. And as far as like union involvement, and as far as involvement with different unions, I think that unions should indeed look after their employees, but then employees shouldn't have to be the ones who join the union. So basically, it shouldn't be mandated that someone joins the union. And other than that, I feel like there's as far as the public employee, I feel like they should have a say. I feel like they should have a say in their own employment as far as hours, as far as wages.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Mr. Zeski.
Thank you so much. Chapter 20 reforms in the Iowa legislature is one of the reasons I'm sitting here tonight. I disagree with that legislation that was passed by Mr. Momsen back in 2017. It protected the security folks who are armed, but it's leaving out people like snowplow drivers, teachers, correctional officers, public workers. It should be a signal probably to everyone that on the day that bill was signed, the person whose photo is taken next to Governor Branstad as he signed that bill was the Iowa arm of the Americans for Prosperity group, which is determined to union bust. I've been endorsed by unions. I've also been recommended in this race as the candidate to represent the ISEA, that being the Iowa State Education Association. That is the teachers' union. So I support the teachers, I support unions, and the legislation that we've seen passed since that bill was signed into law has only chipped away further at the ability to form unions, to retain unions. There were a number of things placed into that law that make union membership more difficult. Unions can be dissolved if they're failing to participate in now required re-elections for their own certification. So that's one of the big issues that I'm even here today. I think that we all do better together. I think that we see income disparities at the top versus the ordinary worker that we haven't seen in 100 years. And I'm a middle class guy. My neighbors are middle class people. I'm not a famous person and I don't have a famous last name. I'm here to support regular folks to make real wages so that they can at last live out the American dream like I think that we all would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. Mr. Momsen.
Thank you. What Chapter 20 reform did was let the taxpayer have a seat at the table. Previous to that, the taxpayer was not allowed even in the room as part of the discussion. And also, if you read the legislation, more issues than just than wages can be discussed, but they must be agreed to by both parties. So if both parties agree that needs to be talked about and can be part of the conversation, that is allowable under the law. I believe this was needed reform, and yes, I voted for it. I will vote for it again, and I will stand by my vote because, like I began the conversation with, the taxpayer under the past system was not allowed in the room to be part of the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Momsen. Ms. Wolf.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that question. So, first of all, I think Iowa workers in general are stronger when we have strong public sector unions. Chapter 20 was enacted back in 1970 in an atmosphere where all over the country, teachers were going on strikes for weeks, sometimes months. Some of those strikes were getting violent. So a bipartisan legislature, Democrats and Republicans, came together and worked out a bargain with input from all sides, everybody involved, in which basically public sector union members gave up their right to strike. It was illegal for them to strike, and in exchange, they got the right to be at the table when it comes to negotiating on issues like hours, work schedule, vacation, benefits, insurance benefits. That was one of the big things, and a whole lot of other issues. So it was a deal. And in 2017, when the House Republicans took control of all three branches of our government, the first bill almost out was filed on February 7th, and it gutted Chapter 20. There's no reason, no rationalization. Nobody before that, in the 7 years I had served, nobody had ever said, gee, we've got a problem with Chapter 20. Nobody in EcoDevo or in school administration or anywhere. So it took away rights from 180,000 Iowans for no good reason, and it was a horrible bill. So, I stand up for working people. That bill did not help working people. It did not decrease costs other than making it more difficult for our nurses, teachers, EMS, our 911 operators to basically get a decent deal. People just want to work and do their job, and we should respect that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. All right, the next question will begin with Mr. Zeski. Over the last 15 to 20 years, property taxes have almost doubled, increased significantly. What changes would you be willing to support or propose to help slow the growth of property taxes?
It is true that property taxes have gone up. That's because we're not Apple and we're not Facebook. If you were Apple, you would have received a $53 million price cut for agreeing to move to the state. If you were Facebook, you would have received $23 million in free state money to lure you to move to Iowa. I don't know how many people watching at home or in the audience have ever been given a 20-year reprieve on their property taxes. I can't afford to do that. I think that those companies can afford to do that. I think that one of the drains has to do with the fact also that Clinton County has lost 2,700 folks over the last decade. You can check that in the census, the U.S. Census. So when there are fewer people living in the county, we're all paying more taxes. I haven't heard any arguments about how we're going to grow the tax base in Clinton County. I, for one, have moved into eastern Iowa from a different part of the country, and so I'm trying to do my part. I pay my property taxes. I think that what we've seen over the course of the last year with COVID-19 is that we've learned a number of things, which is you don't always have to drive to work to do your job. That being said, I can appreciate how living in rural Clinton County, an idyllic situation with lower priced homes than in a metropolitan area, could be ideally a big draw to folks. They have a corporate job, they don't want to live in a city anymore, they can move to a place like Clinton County. And in that event, we're going to end up paying less property taxes. So I would want to grow the pool and not chip away and argue about cents on the dollar with the existing community. I would want to see a growth in the community because I think Clinton County is something that we should all be able to celebrate and lure people into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. Mr. Momsen.
Thank you. The property taxes you pay are set by either the school board, the city council, or the board of supervisors in your area. The legislature out there, we do not set the property tax levy. What we did, I believe 2 years ago, was put a property tax transparency bill out there so that when your assessments go up and either the school board or board of supervisors set the tax levy, that if the amount you pay, actually what you would write your check out for that portion, would be more than 2%, they basically have to have a hearing and let you know about it. And so basically I think that is very important because many times you will hear how, well, we lowered your tax levy, but then why am I paying or writing a larger check out? Well, the assessment went up, but the tax levy was not lowered at an appropriate amount to make it even. And so What we passed was try to create some transparency out there for the taxpayer would know whether their taxes were going up or not and which party was responsible for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mommsen. Ms. Wolf?
Thank you. So, as Representative Mommsen says, yes, most property tax decisions are made at the local level. And so, thank you. Most property taxes are, in fact, made at the local level, as Representative Mommsen said. And, you know, that's a good thing because, again, your local elected officials are probably more accessible on a day-to-day basis than we are at the state. So one thing we all need to do is keep ourselves informed about what kind of decisions are going to be made and also reach out to your city and county elected officials and let them know if you have concerns or questions about property taxes. Now, one thing we can do at the state level is we talked about unfunded mandates earlier. Unfunded mandates, I don't think we actually defined that, but that's when the state passes legislation or doesn't pass needed legislation, and because of that, it ends up costing local government more money than it would have otherwise. So, for example, the mental health regionalization, that has been a big struggle for our area because we pay for that, at least some of it, with property tax levy, and the way it was set up, it ended up really putting a lot of uncertainty into the issue. The other big thing is school funding. When we set the allowable growth, when we set supplemental state aid too low, as we have for most of the past 4 years, the school district then has to come in and levy an additional amount in additional property taxes. Now, we fix that because we then backfill those property tax levies, but we don't have to. So the point is, what we need to be doing is doing our job out there, funding schools adequately, and when we pass a bill requiring anybody to do anything, we need to make sure that we attach some funding to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Ms. Short?
Yes, thank you. So yes, the property tax, I would say that there's a few things. I feel like in Clinton County specifically, there's a lot that weighs on the property owners due to mental health and due to other parts of the budget that's being pulled away from them. One thing that I would propose at a state level, since it's mostly handled by local officials, at a state level, I would say I'm a fan of the Governor Reynolds' bill proposing, and so is 65% of Iowans, proposing a 1% sales tax increase, and that, if that happens, then that would fund mental health and that would lower property taxes. But besides that, you know, I believe that our legislators are already doing a good job funding education. Now, we have to, as a family, the state is the same way, we have to live within our means. We can't pull money out of thin air. So money does have to be allocated towards education, and education is 57% of the state's budget, which is an $8.3 billion budget. So we are funding education. We are, yes, local property taxers, local property tax, people have complained about that. But I think that if we potentially moved mental health to the sales tax, that would be a good solution. Now, I know some people are not in agreement with that, but I'm willing to give that a try. But besides that, I say working with the local government, again, since it is their main objective, it's their area of governance, working with them to create a solution. And so at a state level, I'm willing to have that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Short. All right, the next question will begin with Mr. Mommsen. This has kind of been discussed a little bit, but I want to delve a little bit deeper. Every year there is a very partisan discussion about school funding. What would you do specifically to provide an equal statewide funding formula and remove the concern and rhetoric around allowable growth while still maintaining a balanced budget?
Well, thank you. First of all, we are trying to narrow that student inequity portion that has been talked about there, especially by the Davenport School District. And at one time, there was a $175 difference between what some schools receive in SSA and others. I believe we've narrowed that up 2 or 3 years in a row here. This year, we narrowed it up another $10, and so that discrepancy is narrowing. When it comes to funding, one of the goals of the legislature all the time is to pass it within the first 30 days of once the governor releases her budget. So that way our school districts know what they have to work with. When I've spoken with school boards and superintendents, they want to know as quick as possible so that uncertainty is gone and they can put their budget together, because there's a time clock ticking for them when they have to have that certified by the state. The legislature lately has been doing a very good job of making the 30 days, trying to get as much funding as possible. Like Ms. Short alluded to, the state is like family budget. We only have so much money. The money that we can put into our budget is determined by the Revenue Estimating Conference, which is a group of bipartisan people that give us an estimate of what they think the next year's revenue will be, and then we cannot spend more than 99% of that. So we have very defined borders on what we can spend, and like I said, we're setting education early. It's one of our goals, and then set the rest of the budget after that.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf.
Thanks. So yes, school education funding is always a very spirited discussion. Thank you. People feel very strongly about it, and it's something I spend a lot of time on each session, talking to teachers, excuse me, talking to school administrators and looking at the numbers. So here's the thing. Every year we increase the amount of money that we give our local school districts by a certain percentage, okay? The idea is their costs go up. So every year, understandably, schools need more in order to meet the same expenses. So just to stay even, we have to increase the supplemental state aid. So the issue is always by how much. Now, I will tell you that every year I've been there, schools are saying, and I believe them, that they need 3% at least, and that is just to stay even. For our rural schools, it's even more important because we are competing with Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and Council Bluffs and places where arguably more young people, young professionals would want to live and work and grow a family. So our teachers, our administrators, they need the funding to be able to offer new teachers an attractive package. For the past 4 years, again, since the Republicans took control of the Iowa House, Senate, and the governor's office, we have consistently, I would say, underfunded allowable growth. It is an average of about 1.8% increase each year, which doesn't even keep up with inflation, not to mention giving schools any wiggle room. The other thing is, yeah, by law, we have to pass it within 30 days. As far as I know, and I might be wrong, we haven't done that in any of the 4 years. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Ms. Short?
Yes, thank you. I think, education is so important to our society. It's important to how our families function. Our children are our future. And so I do believe that this is rightfully so, the majority of where our money goes to is to our education sector. But with that, I believe that we are doing a good job, and if you put me in office, I will ensure that our students get what they need. Now, I can't promise fictitious numbers. You can't pull money out of the air. I feel like there's been an unfair pin or a slant like, oh, we don't fund schools, but we do. We've been funding schools, we've been funding education. Just this year alone, the House passed and the governor passed a bill where schools, the increase was by 2.3%. It wasn't just 1%. And that's been happening consistently for the past 10 years, which equates to millions. Even actually there's been a $99 million increase in funding to education alone. And the only time that funding was actually cut for education was 10 years ago under Governor Clover, who is actually a Democrat. I'm not trying to pin Democrat on Republican, but I'm just saying that's a false statement, and I don't think it's warranted or fair. But you can't just pull money out of thin air. The question becomes, where does the money come from? We love our children. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I want them to have quality education. I'm a teacher. I'm in the school system. I substitute teach with some people in the room, and I believe that we need to have funding for all of that, but we just can't make up numbers and pull out of thin air, and then like Clover did, all of a sudden have a 10% across the board cut in the middle of a school year, and the school boards had to deal with that. So instead of letting situations like that happen, we need to prepare, we need to plan ahead, we need to budget wisely within our means. But yes, I think it should remain the number one thing that we fund as a legislator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Mr. Zeski.
Thank you so much for that question. That is one of the other reasons I'm here tonight. In the 38 years prior to 2011, the education was getting a 3% increase 32 out of 38 years prior to 2011. And then starting in 2011, the increase started showing up as 2%. You're all familiar with inflation. If you go back and look at the amount that the legislature under Republicans have been willing to increase education, it matches inflation. So they can say they are adding whatever dollars they want, but if the cost of living and the cost of everything is matching that same level, there is no real increase. So 3% is the minimum. Every time you ask a teachers association, that's what they're asking for from the legislature, and they've been denied that 9 out of 10 years in the last 10 years. I assume somebody else in this room either is a teacher or knows a teacher. And if you are a teacher or know a teacher, then you are familiar with buying your own school supplies for your kids halfway through the school year when you've run out. That's totally unacceptable. We've also seen with COVID-19 that there are a number of schools, a number of rural schools especially, that have not enough broadband access or equipment to facilitate online learning for their kids in the midst of a pandemic. Here in Clinton County and in rural Iowa generally, that forces schools to consolidate, and instead of taking a 7-minute bus ride to the school that your parents went to, you're now taking a 20-minute bus ride to a school you've never been to because the school that used to be in your town has since closed because they can't afford to stay open anymore. I'm for the teachers, I'm for increasing the budget and finding a way, come hell or high water, to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. Okay, we now come down to the final question, and Ms. Wolf, I know we started with you, but we're going to finish with you. So, there's a two-part question. Both the federal and state governments have continued to give greater control and authority to government agencies to increase regulations on environmental issues. Conservation and water quality are important to Iowa farmers. Some believe more agricultural regulations are needed, while others support an incentive-based cooperative approach. Which approach do you prefer, and how do you propose funding Iowa's water quality and soil conservation programs?
That's a good question. Whoops. And I will turn on my mic. Okay. So I try and look at all sides of an issue and listen to people on both sides, and sometimes there's a lot more than two sides to an issue. And water quality, land quality, clean air, those are all things that a lot of people feel very strongly about, and we've been working on this for years now. I think realistically, neither a purely incentive-based program is appropriate. I also think a purely regulated system is also not appropriate. I think we need to work together, Democrats, Republicans, conservationists, and I don't want to say the Farm Bureau people aren't conservationists, but, you know, people who understand farms, understand agriculture, and find a path forward, because we've been fighting about this for years, and we need to get something done. Clean air, clean water, good land, that's so important for Iowa, and I know our farmers care about that. They come out to Des Moines to talk to me about that. It's their land, it's going to be their kids' land, their kids' water, they want it to well. So I do trust at least on a local level, I trust my farm families to do what's right. On the other hand, I also trust most people to wear a seatbelt, and yet also am okay with having a law that says you have to wear it. So I think some regulation is necessary, but I also think we should work with farmers in order to incentivize them and help them fund some of the many, many improvements that I know they're already doing with no funding from the state. So there's a lot of work going on. Oh, I do support Governor Reynolds' proposal to increase our sales tax by 1 cent and to use, I would like to see a lot more money go to fund water quality. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Ms. Short.
Yes, I am grateful for Iowa and Iowa's farmers. We are by nature a farming and agricultural state. We feed not only our own state, but we feed the nation. And so I believe that, our farmers usually know what's best for their land. They've been doing it for generations. And so I do think it should be a partnership. We should be listening. There shouldn't be, broad generalizations made, but there does need to be some type of oversight and some type of standard, much like the Department of Motor Vehicles. Yes, you want to make sure that cars are safe and not polluting the air. But with the land quality, I think that there are advancements being made, and the water quality as well. And I would definitely give it a lot of time and attention. My ears would be open to learn and to create wonderful solutions. I do know something positive that's happened with the water quality here in Iowa. In the past years is that the trout situation, the trout and the water, we went from 6 waterways to 76. And so that means that the water quality has gotten better because trout are very sensitive animals and very sensitive fish to the water. And so just the fact that there has been increase there, and then with was it Buffalo Creek, Buffalo Creek and that whole area. There was a lot of development and advancement there from Class B to Class A waterways. So I don't think that the change is going to be immediate, but I think it's gradually getting better, and I definitely want to help ensure that our water quality and our land, our pollution, the point source, whether it's sewers or just drainage off of fields, that we have good solutions for our farmers and for everyone else involved in our state.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Mr. Zeski.
Water quality is an existential threat right now. I just read something earlier this week that 57% of the water segments that they've tested in Iowa are considered polluted in some way, shape, or form. I believe in science. I believe in climate change. I appreciate folks like Norlin, who are farmers by trade, doing everything that they can for their land. Just to run through a quick list of what we're expecting our family farmers to do to make sure that we're able to pass on quality soil and water to our families and to our families' families. They're doing things like cover crops, watershed planning, bioreactors, saturated buffers, wetlands, drainage water management, no-till, strip-till, nutrient stewardship, prairie strips, stream buffers. I could go on. Basically, farmers are forced to use science to mitigate factors that industry has used to pollute our environment. I think that family farmers are on the front line of this. I think that if it were up to industry, they would just close them all out and incorporate all their lands. I'm sure that some of you have driven on some of the rural highways here in Clinton County and seen signs out by the road, 50 acres for sale, 112 acres for sale. My guess is that those folks are trying to make ends meet, and they're not interested in getting rid of part of their land, but they're being forced to. I think that the state should be willing to step in and help family farmers, as Iowa's 85% farmland. So I think that that's incredibly important. I appreciate the stewardship of local farmers, family farmers, and I think that we need to keep a close eye on oversight of industrial farming, which is the main cause for the water quality issue in Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. Zeski. Mr. Momsen.
Thank you. I got 2 hours, right? Well, this is one of the issues that I've spent a lot of time at the Capitol working on, and we already have an initiative-based approach. In 2014, the state passed the nutrient reduction strategy, which is a scientific approach to nutrient reduction. Was put together by Iowa State, the DNR, and the Iowa Department of Agriculture. And one of the things you got to realize when you talk about water quality is there's two components to it. There's the phosphorus component, which is related more to erosion. If the soil stays there, the phosphorus stays there. But nitrogen is a different beast. It travels with water. So when you have water infiltrate through the soil or run off the soil, the nitrogen could go with it. So it takes two different approaches to it. And that's why this nutrient reduction strategy is so important, because it deals with both of them. The strategy creates infield practices, which would include buffer strips and cover crops, and then it has edge of field practices, such as saturated buffers at the edges of a field and your bioreactors, and both of these take the nitrogen out of the water before it enters the stream. In the legislature also, we 2 years ago passed SR 512, which created a dedicated funding stream for both point source pollution and non-point pollution. So that dealt with urban and rural runoff, which I think was a very good deal. I believe we are actually picking up a lot of steam. I'm on the Soil and Water Conservation Board. We run out of money for cost sharing and cover crops every year. And I also heard from Secretary Nag within the last few days. It took us 19 years to develop 40 new wetlands in the state of Iowa. We are going to create 50 more in the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the questioning portion of this forum. We'll now proceed to the closing statements, and we'll allow each candidate 1 minute to make a closing statement. We'll begin with Mr. Zeski.
Thank you so much. There were a number of other things that I hope that we could get to tonight. In the event that you, any of you in the audience or any of you at home are interested in looking up what else I'm campaigning on, my name is here. I have a unique last name, so it won't be hard to find. I appreciate everybody out here wearing masks tonight. I think that we're in a unique situation in our country right now, and I think that we should make sure that we're all taking care of each other the best we can. I think after the derecho, we saw a lot of community involvement and people getting together and helping in ways that we'd never seen before. And I think that Iowa's ready to do that over the long term. I think that we're up to it. I'd like to be part of that, and I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Momsen.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. My son is a captain in the U.S. Army. He has spent time in Afghanistan, Iraq, South Africa, Thailand, and every time he comes home, he says, I can't wait to get back to Iowa. You don't have any idea what it is like elsewhere. And I can't wait for him to come back either. So I have spent my time at the Capitol trying to improve the quality of life for all Iowans, and especially my son and grandsons. And I think my record supports that. I have helped pass bills to prevent cruelty to animals. I have worked with the Department of Agriculture on regulations concerning animals. One issue was helping with doggy daycares. I have helped create a foreign animal disease department at the department. Like I said earlier, I've been knee-deep in the water quality issues at the state. And also school funding. I was very supportive and helped get through the SAVE funding, which it helps create that 1 cent sales tax or continue the 1 cent sales tax for our schools. So I have been very active in improving the quality of life for all Iowans, and I would ask for your vote to help me continue that mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf.
Thank you. So this is an election, and part of my job, this is an election, and part of my job is to explain to you why you should elect me to go back to the Iowa House. So let me tell you why. I have worked for the past 10 years with members of both parties on legislation that's good for Clinton County. Representative Momsen and I have filed bills together. We've worked to push those bills forward, and we've had a couple of bills passed, bills that members of our community have asked us to get passed. So we've been successful. I have worked on agriculture bills, and I have worked with members of the Farm Bureau. I've listened to them and looked at the bills, and I think because of that, this is the third election term in which I have been named a friend of agriculture by Farm Bureau. I've also been endorsed by the Sierra Club. I've worked on bills also to protect animals. I was named a Legislator of the Year by the Iowa Pet Alliance. So the point is, I know how to work across the aisle. I know how to compromise. I know how to negotiate. I know how to win. I've done it every day in my day job, in my job as an attorney. It's the same type of work. We have to set aside our differences. And once this election is over, it's not about Democrats or Republicans. I represent all of my constituents, regardless of party, and I look forward to the opportunity to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Short.
Yes. So I just want to thank everyone for your time and thank you for coming out. And I believe that if you vote for me, you would honestly have a successful, a bright, a prosperous Clinton County. I offer creative solutions. I have extensive relationships with people in different states, in different countries, in different nations. And during this coronavirus pandemic alone, I was able to use my resources to help get PPE to the National Guard, to get PPE to our governor's team. I was able to start a food pantry in town. I was able to see needs and meet needs. So I'm a very capable, I'm a very bright, I'm a very energetic person, but I don't sit around and wait for things to be told to me. I go out and get things done. I feel like I'll be the best representative for Clinton County. I believe that my incumbent has had 10 years to show what her leadership does for Clinton County. And in the past 10 years, how is Clinton County better? What can you say her leadership has produced you? But I can guarantee I'll work hard, I'll get the job done, I'll ask questions, I'll bring creative solutions, and I'll make Clinton County a prosperous place again. So I would appreciate your vote come November 3rd.
Thank you. That concludes the candidate forum from the two House races. I'd like to thank all four candidates for participating and for your thoughtful answers, and good luck in the elections.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, let's move on, and we now are going to move on to the Clinton County Treasurer's race. We have two candidates tonight. We have on my right Bill Jacobs. He's the challenger, and on the left we have Dustin Johnson. He's the current incumbent treasurer. We're going to allow both of them 2 minutes to make an introduction, and then we'll proceed with the questions. Let's start with Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, and thanks to the Chamber for hosting us this evening. I'd like to introduce myself, tell you why I am running for this office, and present my platform in the 2 minutes that I have. My parents, Bud and Rosie Jacobs, instituted in me a strong sense of duty to lead and serve others. I graduated from UNI with the honor of the Purple and Old Gold Award. My parents had bought modern plumbing while I was in college, so after college I moved to Clinton and worked in Sears as the credit manager and assistant manager in downtown Clinton. After a year, I went back to graduate school at Augustana in South Dakota and received a teaching certificate and a master's degree. From there, I taught and coached debate at the high school and college level for several years. I returned to Clinton to help my parents' business and was their bookkeeper and office manager until the business was sold. During that time also, I taught as an adjunct at Ashford University. In 2015, I overcame cancer and am cancer-free today. Since then, I've been elected and re-elected as the county chair of the Clinton County Democratic Party. What led me to run is that when I was deciding to continue on as the county chair, I was listening to a sermon. And in that sermon, it dealt with the topic on the Sermon on the Mount that was, don't worry about material possessions, but keep doing what is right. I felt a calling to continue serving, and I would like to continue and expand upon that to all the people of Clinton County. My platform is fourfold. One, I want to make sure that the Treasury works for the economic and social benefit of the people. Two, I want to create a safe and healthy environment in the office. Three, I want to build a team that is responsive to the needs of the taxpayers. Four, I want to seek and implement solutions to the climate catastrophe. I hope that we'll have more time during the next few questions to discuss more about this platform, but I want to leave you with a message of hope. I want to read to you Matthew 6, verse 34, which says, don't worry about tomorrow, it will take care of itself. You have enough to worry about today. Today you're faced with the choice of who to elect to the office of treasurer. I hope you'll provide me the opportunity to serve you by electing me, Bill Jacobs, as your county treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dustin Johnson. I was born and raised around Andover in northeast Clinton County. I have 3 kids out there. We live just south of town, Olivia, Verena, and Dylan. They're all students at Northeast. I have a varied background. After graduating, I went and studied robotics and automation. After graduating from college, I served as an industrial electrician, and I was a member of the UAW for 2 years. I'm currently a modest family farmer, small business owner, and active community leader. I've been active in the Farm Bureau for 11 years. I served the last 3 years as the county president. I've participated in a number of Marines Grow Clinton County days and advocated for our community at the state level as I advocate locally consistently. I've served on a church council, was active in 4-H, and I'm honored to have been serving the residents of Clinton County for the last 5.5 months as treasurer, taking on Rhonda's legacy in the midst of a lot of turmoil. Really proud to serve with the staff that I have. They're excellent, professional, and efficient, and I look forward to continuing that effort.
Thank you. We'll now begin with the questions. As previously mentioned, we're going to ask questions of each of you, and we'll give you each 2 minutes to respond. We're going to start the first question with Mr. Johnson. How would you describe the current state of funds and the budget for the county, and what changes would you make if elected to the funds in the budget?
So a lot of the budget decisions are made by the supervisors, but as far as managing the office, Rhonda has had a legacy of excellent management there. The Treasury runs very efficiently. There's always opportunities for change and advancement and growth, and I think my background with automation and efficiency brought my number acumen forward. So my decisions are made based on data. So I've analyzed my staff's performance, the needs of the county. We're up 15% in title processing since the pandemic hit. So we've had to readjust how we do business, handle things remotely, deal with a lot of mail and Dropbox business. So throughout that shutdown, we're focused on efficiency and productivity, and we have recalibrated the office to work the best we can with the resources that we have. So moving forward, I'm dedicated to continuing to keep the DeWitt satellite office open a minimum of 3 days a week. We changed up the staffing requirements out there so we could do that and actually save the county money. So we're providing more service to the county at a lower cost. So I'm proud to have been able to do that, and I want to continue to be able to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Being the challenger in this race, I don't have the advantage of having been in the office. I look forward to getting in there and talking with the staff and building a solid relationship with them. In the past, I have coached and developed teams both at the high school and college level, as I mentioned before, but also as working within the county party as well. I think that I can bring that skill to the county treasurer's office and that we can make a more efficient office. I do want to say one thing about the desire for efficiency, and that is an important goal, but it's not the most important goal. If you take efficiency, for instance, in education, you start out with a class of 20 students. It's more efficient to have 25. You get more efficient if you have 30, and soon you eliminate a position. So the goal should be to serve the people of Clinton County, and I look forward to being able to do that. I will have, like I say, a lot to learn on this job, but I think that I have the ability and the skill to be able to work with people and to make that happen for the benefit of the people of Clinton County. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess we'll take that one step further. I mean, over just the last couple of years, there's been a lot of technological innovations, a lot more titling and driver's license over the internet, and now with COVID, restrictions on how patrons can access the treasurer's office. What do you see, or what do you intend as far as implementation or provision of services from the treasurers moving forward?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is look at the layout of the office with the bottleneck that exists in the hallway. That as you go into the office, you have the recorder's office, the treasurer's office right there, and there's only one way in, and that's the same way to get out. So I think we need to look at the possibility of maybe making that a second exit so that people can flow smoothly through that office. As far as the technology is concerned, I think that it's important that we leverage that technology to the best ability that we can, and I also think that keeping the satellite office is very, very important. I also would want to explore the possibility of maybe having a universal clerk that can handle the duties of the auditor's office, the recorder's office, and the treasurer's office, and that person would be able to do a circuit where they can go to the individual towns maybe once a month, and they can bring those services closer to the people. From the standpoint of what we can do with the energy to save energy, by having one person drive to those towns is a lot better than 5 or 6 people driving all the way to Clinton. We can have that overall effect of making more efficient so that we can stop the adverse effects of climate change. So I look forward to exploring all of those possibilities, and I would like to see that we do what is best for the people of Clinton County.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, so luckily I've had the opportunity to implement a bunch of changes through this. I've updated the county website on iowatreasurers.org, which is where you can go and pay your property taxes and update your tags. So I encourage folks to continue to use that resource that improves efficiency in our office while continuing to provide very accurate and timely service. So after updating the website, I've tried to link and update our Google presence as people search for our businesses and addresses and phone numbers, tried to gear them towards doing business remotely. Advocated for continuing to have drop boxes available so folks who work during the day and can't access our hours during normal business hours can still continue to do service with us as timely as possible. And the idea of having somebody go around the county is a little bit concerning because we have to have a dedicated secure link to the DOT website in order to do business, so your personal information remains safe. That's very important to me. I'm a big believer in security, both on the internet and through the mail. I want to continue to provide service where folks know that their information is safe with us as we do titling. So I'm dedicated to continuing to provide timely service while maintaining a high level of security.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, with regard to collecting and distribution of tax revenues, which is a significant part of the treasurer's job, how would you look to improve the coordination with municipalities and school districts?
So our job is to serve the needs of the public. If the school district has needs and the fire districts have needs, it's our job to make sure those funds get there in a timely manner and get there accurately. So I'm continuing to learn who is in charge of those different authorities and districts, and so I'm trying to develop those relationships while most folks have wanted to maintain social distancing, making phone calls and trying to continue community outreach to any stakeholders in that regard. I'm committed to serving them. So as far as bringing in tax money goes, I'm still committed to timely processing of tax payments. Things that come into our office get turned around that day as far as tax payment goes. So we're committed to maintaining that level of service so folks know that their taxes are paid when they send their payment in. So we're going to continue to do so as efficiently and effectively as possible because we are a dual purpose office. We have to balance the labor needs for collecting taxes during these busy seasons with still maintaining vehicle services. And we have several deputies that are cross-training currently as an initiative I brought in to continue to maintain flexibility as needs change in the office. I want to continue to have folks that are ready to work in whatever need the public has. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs.
Yeah, I think it's very important that the other entities are able to get their money in a timely fashion. I think that as the treasurer, it is important to develop those relationships as Dustin has mentioned. I think in this time of COVID, we had the other problem of having to remain socially distant at the same time. So I think that having meetings of those people with the treasurer is going to be very important. One of my first goals is to get to know the people within the office and the people that we are serving out in the school districts and the other fire townships, as was mentioned. I do want to make sure that the staff has some input into all of this also. They will know a great deal about what is going on and what has happened, and I look forward to working with them and learning from them. I also think it's important to build a good relationship within the administration as well, to work with Eric and the Board of Supervisors so that we can make the office as efficient as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs, are there the treasurer's office is the primary steward of the county's finances. Are there any changes you would recommend to the county's investment policies, or what changes would you make, if any?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that the money that is invested here in Clinton County, that money is put into banks and other financial institutions that put that money to work for the benefit of the people of Clinton County. I also want to make sure that on the budget side, that money is being used for the betterment of the people of Clinton County. As far as individual changes, I don't know yet. The Republican Party has been controlling this office for over 25 years, and I think it's important that we get new eyes on the situation and look and see exactly where that money is invested. So as far as specifics, I'm unable to do that at this time, but I look forward to reviewing that and to make sure that our money is being responsibly stewarded by this office.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yep. So it's been my philosophy since April 1st when I took over to maintain a balanced and fair approach to where the county funds are held. So we deal with mainly 4 banks throughout the county that serve the needs in the western side and the eastern side of the county. So every month, I do an insurance audit, an interest rate audit on each bank, and we record what they're paying and willing to invest in, if we invest in them, what they're willing to pay for interest rates. So we have shifted some of the funds to banks that have needed them for the PPP program to help make sure they had funds available to make those loans to our local citizens. So I'm going to continue to try and maintain balance as each bank across the community has needs. I'm in constant communication with the presidents of the banks almost weekly to make sure that things are going well, and we have a communication protocol anytime we need to move funds between them. So I'm going to continue to invest the county's money as effectively as I can within our local community, and we'll look forward to maintaining those relationships with the banks.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, if elected, what's your vision of the Treasurer's Office and its role in the county in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I 100% believe that we need to continue to provide timely service to our residents, trying to turn work as quickly as we can with the labor that we have available without increasing costs, while still maintaining effective service out in DeWitt at the satellite location. Moving forward, I hope that we can continue to develop an online presence that encourages folks to do business that way, because it's much more timely. We can have a clerk do a tax payment in less than 30 seconds if it's done online, versus if they come in, it's over 2.5 minutes. So just simple changes like that can really increase the amount of service we can provide for the same amount of cost. So looking forward to that, and I believe it's my personal mission to continue to be an advocate for our community. And I want to work with the leadership within the county and the state to bring the issues that we would have from the Treasury and from the community out to make sure that the decisions that are made at the State House are effective as they come down to us on the front lines.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. I think that's a very important question. We are only filling out 2 years, so my goals are going to be shorter than that. The next 2 years where I'd like to see the Treasurer's Office. First, I'd like to provide service to all of Clinton County where the people are, so that they don't have to drive all the way from Lost Nation to Clinton to be able to get their taxes turned in. I also will maintain the office in DeWitt and maybe even be able to expand the number of hours that we're able to be there. Second, I want to make sure that this office is carbon neutral, that we are doing everything we can to stop the climate catastrophe that is before us. It doesn't take a tree to fall on you to realize that we have to do something about climate change. All of the candidates tonight should have been talking about this topic. Every one of you in the audience needs to consider this topic. Our world is getting worse and worse because of the climate, and we need to do whatever we can in whatever office we hold to stop that problem. Next, I want to make sure that we have a workforce in the office that is secure, that they don't catch COVID because of the public coming into the office. I want to make sure that there's an esprit de corps within the office so that we have a happy and safe staff that is greeting the people and is friendly and responsive to the needs of the people. And finally, I do want to use this as a platform to advocate for change, as Dustin has said, both at the state level and the county level. I want to be in the room when the budget's being made. I know that the Board of Supervisors makes the budget for the entire county, and that as the treasurer, we're only responsible for our particular office. But I want to help shape and develop that policy so that we can have not only the best treasurer's office, but the best government possible at the county level. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the questions for the treasurer's race. We'll now move on to closing statements, and each candidate will have 1 minute to give a closing statement. We'll begin with Mr. Johnson.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Maureen, for putting this on, and thank you for everybody who tuned into this very interesting discussion. So I want to continue to provide timely and accurate service to the citizens of Clinton County and work hard to continue to promote efficiencies where we can and maintain the service when we can't. So with that, I'll continue to advocate for improvement of our communities. We do a lot of work through 657As where the city's doing a lot of work to improve the communities and take down the neglected and abandoned houses. We had a meeting this morning about that. I'm very proud to be part of that team that's advocating for improvement of our community, and I'll continue to do so on the front lines and in Des Moines.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank everyone who has listened in to Maureen and the Chamber for hosting us tonight, and thank you, Dave, for being the moderator also. I want to learn as much as possible about this office, and I want to develop within the team a staff that can respond to the needs of the people. I want to make sure that that staff stays healthy, and most importantly, as you heard before, I want to make sure that we do everything we can to fight climate change. I want to keep the people of Clinton County as safe as possible, and I want them to prosper and grow. I think that we need to have an increase in population. We can't continue on the road we have with a declining population and expect to have the same services. We have to grow the tax base, and the only way to grow the tax base is to grow the people. And we need people to think of Clinton County as a good place to live, and I will do the best I can as the treasurer to make sure that we are seen as the place, the best place to live in the state of Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our forum as it relates to the Treasurer's Office. I'd like to thank Mr. Jacobs and Mr. Johnson for participating this evening, as well as your thoughtful and insightful responses to our questions. And good luck to each of you in the race. We're now going to take a short break. We have two more exciting races to discuss, the Supervisor's race and the Sheriff's race. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to tonight's candidate forum here on AM 1390.
All right, thank you for coming back. We're all back here. We're going to move on to our supervisor's race. We have two candidates for our supervisor's race. The first one is our incumbent, Tom Detterman, and to my right is challenger Mike Brown. As we've done in the past and earlier this evening, we're going to allow each of the candidates an opportunity to make an opening statement. That'll consist of 2 minutes statement to give their background and qualifications, and then we'll move on to the question phase. We'll begin with Tom Detterman.
Good evening. I'm Tom Detterman. I am your Clinton County Supervisor. Was born and raised in Clinton County. Went to St. Mary's High School. Attended Milwaukee School of Engineering in Milwaukee. Was in the U.S. Army for 2 years. I was in the 1st Armored Division in Germany. And when I got back, I came back to the family business in Comanche, Detterman Blacktop. Then I got married. I married my wife, Judy. We've been married almost 48 years. I have 2 daughters, Danica and Tommy, and 3 grandkids. When I got back, I ran the asphalt division for a couple years and really enjoyed most going out in the county. We did work all throughout the county, but we enjoyed the county work the most. Then we started a new river terminal. And that included the river terminal, warehousing, and trucking. So then I ran that operation for over 30 years. And it was 365 days, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. So it kept me more than busy. And I retired from Detterman Industries as president. I've been involved with the Chamber and the Clinton area development for over 30 years. Past chair of both of those. And was Clinton City Councilman at large for 3 years, and this is my 4th year as your county supervisor. I've been to Washington, D.C. at least 25 times in the last 20 years, and more than 100 times to Des Moines. Over those 20 years, we helped bring back over $100 million to the Clinton County economy. I'm chair of the Airport Commission, vice chair of the US 30 Coalition. I'm on the board of directors of ABI in Des Moines, Association of Business and Industry, and at least 15 other boards and commissions.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here tonight. My name is Mike Brown, and I'm running for the Clinton County Supervisor. I've lived in Clinton County most of my life, having retired from the Clinton Fire Department as chief at the end of last year. My wife, Mary, is a 1st grade teacher at Whittier Elementary here in Clinton. This is my first experience running for an elected position, although I've been actively involved in municipal politics for over 20 years. In Clinton, I've effectively worked with 5 different city administrators, 3 different mayors, and a multitude of city council members. On a more regional level, I've worked with state legislators on numerous public safety initiatives. I've worked with many of the mayors in Clinton County, most of the fire, law enforcement, and EMS agencies that keep us safe. I've had the privilege of learning what works from some very efficient and proactive elected officials and learning what to avoid from those who are not. My leadership and earned trust in public safety has been tested in good times and bad, and I'll bring that same level of trust and dedication to the Board of Supervisors. My past administrative duties have enabled me to hone the skills that make me the best candidate for this position, and I'd like to highlight a few. Proven fiscal responsibility and municipal budget management, organized labor management, the ability to listen to the needs of the public, and above all, problem solving, conflict resolution, and critical thinking skills that I employed every day as fire chief. I'm seeking election to this position purely out of a desire to serve, and that means to serve all of Clinton County. My platform is really quite simple: to be a fair, honest, and transparent member of the board, to be attentive to the needs and desires of my constituents, to always represent Clinton County in a positive light, and to look at some of the same old issues with a new perspective and a fresh set of eyes. This is and will be my commitment to you as I serve as your county supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We'll now begin the question and answer session. First question will begin with Mr. Brown. Mental health care has become an ever-expanding issue for our community and many others. With the state of Iowa having regionalized the mental health care, what options do you see available for both managing Clinton County's pro rata costs and improving the care for our citizens in need?
Thank you. That's a good question. In my prior work life, I've seen the problems we have with mental health care in Clinton County. It's really frustrating when you pick up a patient and there's no place for them. The ER doesn't want them. The police department doesn't have a place to take them. They haven't broke a law. It's a frustrating issue. And I would guess there's probably not many people in this room that don't know somebody that's been affected by that issue. So all sorts of things to consider. First of all, I think our supervisors and Mr. Irwin especially have done a great job in getting the counties that are in our region together to make some positive changes for the greater good of the entire region. I think the biggest issue right now is to hold our legislators accountable, to provide the funding that's been allocated to the issue and to meet the future funding goals in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Detterman. Certainly. Mental health care has become an ever-expanding issue for our community and many others. With the state of Iowa having regionalized the mental health care, what options do you see available for both managing Clinton County's pro rata costs and improving the care for our citizens in need?
The cost. Sorry. The state dictates our cost. Right now we're at 3078. Is the state dictates what our region can levy for that. So our costs are fixed by the state. We've had a lot of problems with the state over the last 4 years with regionalizing it. Scott County was only doing about half of what we were, and so there was a lot of problems with the money end of it. We just did a new 28E where we get everyone has to levy the same, all 5 counties in the region. And that 3078 actually only brings in 9.5 million, and we're spending 12.5 last year. So I mean that can't continue. So they had drastic cuts in their budget over the last winter, and what we're helping is the state has a 1 penny sales tax for water quality. And the first 3/8 cent has to go to water quality, but we're looking for that funding to come out of that. And the governor had an initiative for that, and then COVID got in there, and they kind of adjourned. So we're hoping to get that mental health off your property tax. We think it should be a state funded, and we're really pushing that. In the new 28E agreement, we didn't have if our representative couldn't make it, we didn't get a vote. And that's ridiculous. So anyway, we got the 28E change where we have an alternate that can vote on that. The other big thing was, I think we've only met once since they formed this. All 5 counties and all the commissioners, we put that in the new 2080 that we will meet at least yearly. I'd like to meet at least twice a year to hammer some of these issues out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Denneman, over the past 50-plus years, American business has survived and thrived by reducing costs and reducing many layers of management. Any discussion of efficiencies in government services such as roads, police, deputies, fire, and schools is very controversial and very emotional. Do you see value in state legislation that would provide short-term incentives to municipalities, counties, and school districts to consolidate management structures without reducing services?
We've always been in the private sector my whole life. You have to stay efficient to stay in business. And so, we're always looking at it. I don't know if any incentives from the state, being in city government and now county government, really everyone, I'll have to admit, is pretty strapped. I think we've probably cut the meat to the bone on a lot of things. So it's tough to get any more efficiencies, but you always have to keep looking. And I wish the the cities and the counties would get together at least once a year, have one project to do together, whether it's the county now, we're helping the city maintain their gravel roads. So there's always something that one agency does better than the other.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Could you repeat the question? It's kind of long.
It's a long question, absolutely. Over the past 50-plus years, American business has survived and thrived by reducing costs and reducing many layers of management. Any discussion of efficiencies in government services, such as roads, police, sheriff, fire, and schools, is very controversial and emotional. Do you see the value in state legislation that would provide short-term incentives to municipalities, counties, and to school districts to consolidate management structures, but without reducing services?
Okay, it's a pretty complex question. Yeah, you know, the short-term solutions, that means that they're going to incentivize you to do it, but then those are going to run out. So I think to start with, anytime you're talking about consolidating services and management, you're going to have some open dialogue with all those involved. And I think you're going to have some dialogue with the public, because they're the ones that dictate what services they want. One of the things I was hoping to bring up tonight, and I guess I'll probably just do it here, is I do believe the county suffers from a lack of a strategic plan. Strategic planning, if done correctly, gives you a roadmap on how to make changes like that. And the biggest piece of strategic planning is you would have citizen input. You would have a survey of sorts. We've done it here in the city of Clinton to ask the taxpaying public what are their needs, what are their wants, and then you can go to your strategic plan and make those decisions based on what you decided to move forward with. But again, I agree with Mr. Detterman. I think everybody's been cut to the bone. Possibly sharing managements in some areas are possible, but I mean, as far as efficiencies, I think everybody's pretty lean and doing the best they can. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, you talked about a lack of strategic plan and, based on your belief. The county has seen a decrease in population and decrease in industry over the years. If elected as a county supervisor, what do you believe, or what will you encourage as the role of the county in economic development and attracting new businesses to the area and increasing population?
It's a great question. And, you know, the pat answer that everybody was going to answer to this is to bring more jobs to the area, to pay a living wage and great benefits to attract new folks to the community. That's the simple answer. And a lot of good work has been done on this front in the county. There's numerous shovel-ready sites in place, Air and Rail Park and DeWitt's Industrial Park. I think we've got that ready. I think at the same time we've got to emphasize maintaining our current business structure and the people that are already here, employing people, and keep them growing and help any way we can. But I really think to grow our economy locally, we need to entice, well, first of all, those currently working in Clinton County to live here. And I know there's a lot of big industries and a lot of big businesses where their management folks don't live in Clinton County. And again, going back to that strategic plan, we need to identify why they're not living here. Is it lack of the housing that they want in their market? Is it lack of amenities? Personally, I feel Clinton County has got so much to offer them to move to. It's a cheap place to live. We've got excellent school districts. We've got excellent teachers and facilities. Again, low cost of living, low crime. Our communities are excellent. You can live in Clinton, which is a big town. DeWitt and Comanche are kind of big. Great small town. And there's always rural living as well. So I feel that we've got those things, but I apparently am wrong, because there's still a lot of people that aren't living here. Again, you bring more jobs here, we're going to bring more new people here, but I think we have the opportunity to bring more residential growth here just with what we've got. I think there's jobs available. So appreciate the question.
Thank you. Mr. Detterman.
It's a great question. That's the one we've all been talking about. Jeez. Yeah. I was up here. I should know that for 3 years. Anyway, the job. I think jobs. Like I say, there's a lot of jobs in Clinton, but the people don't live here. I'm totally shocked we don't have a plant manager living in town yet. And then I hear we just don't have the housing stock for them. If we do have any housing, they have 2 or 3 houses to look at. In the Quad Cities, they can look at hundreds. So I think we really have to look at our housing to help get our jobs. Last I remember, there's 3,000 to 4,000 people drive into Clinton every day to work. So if we would just get half of those, that'd be an immediate boost. So I think housing needs to be actually higher on our priorities, I guess. It was great when I was on the city council, when Bob Bucher came with the landing, and he didn't want a TIF, so we made an abatement with him, and we worked with the developer and gave him what he needed, and that's 200 or 300 apartments out there. Talking to Dustin the other day, they're already that's phased in, but they're already getting on the tax rolls. So a 5-year abatement was, I think, a great incentive for them. And you just have to work with these developers and see what their needs are.
Thank you. Mr. Denman, there's been a lot of talk in the last year or so about some type of regional technical development center or academy for the schools to help with more of the tech jobs and skilled labor. What, if any, role do you believe the board should have in supporting that development as well as working towards or assisting in workforce training and development?
I think the county has to be involved in it. I'm kind of shocked of like the welding program and building trade. Some of that has gone down in the high schools. We need to get our businesses more in tune with what they need to talk to our education, and we need to train people for what they need. And this regional center is a great concept. I know I've totally supported it. We've talked about having it maybe on the west edge of town, so it'd be kind of more central located for DeWitt, Northeast, and all the kids we can get. But, I mean, that would be, I think, I know welding was another big issue on there. And so all we can do is help, support them. The supervisors have somebody on the chamber and the economic development. I am the representative for that. And the fact is, we were just talking the other day because the Clinton Community College has a new president and see where that's going. But we have to keep pushing it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Kind of goes back to the earlier question about resource sharing, and I think it's a great idea. I know it's been talked about for a number of years with different administrators locally here. Again, however the supervisors can help, I think that'd be great. I was a recipient of good shop class training in high school. It allowed me to leave Clinton High School and 10 days later be employed by the Chicago Northwestern Railroad as a welder, making more than my dad did. So there's a lot of benefit to shop class, and there are so many needs for training for welders and electricians and plumbers, and quite honestly, those trades are going to be the future big money makers in our society because they're hard work, and a lot of people have lost that work ethic. So I think anytime you can regionalize and get groups to work together, train our students. I mean, they're our commodity. They're what's going to be our future. So if we can train them in the skills that are going to be needed in the next 15 or 20 years in Clinton County, great opportunity, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, over the years, the Board of Supervisors has considered various road improvement plans. Included in those discussions has been the possibility to issue bonds to improve and resurface deteriorating surface roads. Do you support the issuance of bonds for road improvements, and if so, explain why?
Well, having not being intimate with the county's budget at this point, I'm going to guess that they don't have the cash sitting on hand to do those road projects. I do understand that there's a fairly in-depth 5-year plan for roads, and obviously that's great. I know we've got a great county engineer. I've worked with him on a few issues over the years in the past, and So unless that money's sitting there, obviously you're going to have to bond for it, or because roads do need improved. Our farmers need good roads to get their stuff to the market, and it's the county's responsibility. And as I've been talking to folks in the county, that's one of the issues that comes up a lot. We want make sure our roads, especially in the spring. I've met with a lot of fire service guys, and gravel roads in springtime and big heavy fire trucks full of water, they don't mix well. So I'm sure it's a daunting task. I know road improvement in the city of Clinton over the years was always a challenge. You're never going to make everybody happy. People are going to still say our roads are bad, but I think I think the taxpayers, when it comes to bonding for projects, it's not that they're worried about raising taxes, it's more that they're worried about, are we spending their tax dollars wisely? So if roads are a priority, and again, in a strategic plan, that would be simple to go right back to that and say, this is part of our strategic plan that everybody has approved. So that's all I say about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Detterman.
I would be against bonding for roads because at this time we don't need to. About 10 years ago, they bonded to do 350th and some other roads. That's before the gas tax increase. Since then, we've had a 10-cent gas tax increase, and the county has been able to allocate that in a fair way. And we've been keeping up with things. We have an excellent county engineer, again, has a 5-year plan. And we're actually the envy of the whole state on bridges. Most people have a major problem on bridges in the counties. We have a plan to replace our bridges. We have 300 bridges. They last 30 years. We have a bridge crew. We do 10 a year. It's all set and done. And let me tell you, there's not too many counties in the state of Iowa can tell you about the bridge program. We actually have taken some of our equipment up to other counties. They're driving piling. They would drive maybe 2 pieces of steel piling a day. I think we were there 2 hours and drove like 24. So they just don't have the right equipment. And again, Clinton County has been very fortunate, one of the few that's had a bridge crew, and that's helped a lot. We have a great program on, they have a schedule to gravel the roads on a schedule. And when we had 2 years ago, when we had the bad winter, they have a schedule to go out and dig them out, put in big rock and get them going. I hate to say it, when we get a bad winter like we had a couple years ago, that 20 below and that, you just can't do a lot. It's Mother Nature. But again, I think Clinton County does an excellent job on their roads.
Thank you. All right, last question. Mr. Detterman, what do you see as the top priorities for Clinton County? And if elected, how would you propose to deal with those priorities?
Well, the top priorities right now, it's been an unusual year here, but the top priorities are keeping our employees safe, maintaining our services to the taxpayers, and keeping taxes to a minimum. And I think we've done a fairly good job keeping our employees safe. We were shut down a couple months. We rebuilt, mainly the treasurer's office, the recorder, auditors with shields, protect our employees that way. We require our visitors to wear masks in the public areas. And like I say, that's the top priority. After that, we get to jobs. Again, we need more jobs. We need more housing for those jobs. And as always, we need to finish 4-lane Highway 30 in Clinton County. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. It's for the history of it. You look back, Clinton was pretty well on the way up till about 1970. What happened in 1970? Interstate 80 opened. Actually, the old Highway 30 was the interstate of its day, and ever since Interstate 80's opened, we've been, I'll just say it, we've been neglected by the state. For whatever reason, I don't know why they can't, we pay taxes. They finished 20 four-lane up in the northwest part of the state a couple years ago, and actually we supported those people. We knew they need it, and trying to get support for our end now seems to be a problem, and I don't know why. Again, in economic development, these people won't even look at your community if you're not on a good four-lane. We have a little stretch of four-lane, but we have 40 miles west of DeWitt and 20 miles that way. And let me tell you, it'd be a new world if we got Highway 34 laned on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, what do you see as the top priorities for Clinton County, and how would you propose to deal with those priorities?
Well, there are quite a few priorities. Some are fairly new and some have been around a long time. Mr. Detterman referenced Highway 30, and I agree, it probably needs to get done. We've been trying for years and years and years. All I can say is if you try something and it doesn't work, perhaps try it a different way, maybe send some new folks out, new faces to talk to them. I don't know. I appreciate all the hard work everybody's done to try to do it, but it has not happened. So let's maybe regroup and try something different. Obviously, challenges are ahead. The current budget and next year's budget are going to be interesting with reduced revenues over the last year, derecho recovery and COVID recovery, ongoing issues that are going to probably bleed over into next year. Mental health funding, of course, we spoke of that. Unspoken thing, communication upgrades in our county that during the derecho we lost communications and there were people out working on our safety with no communications. That's going to be a huge cost to the county at some point. That's a priority, and that's something that probably parts of it are being addressed immediately in Clinton, but to get the whole county addressed, that's going to be a big issue. And again, I'm not going to sound like a broken record, but we need to have a plan where we can look to our strategic plan and say, these are our priorities. Let's make sure that everything we decide coincides. When we do CIP stuff, does it coincide with your strategic plan? It's something that'll probably take a while to do, but I think we can do it. But again, many challenges. I think good communication amongst the supervisors and county staff is going to be key to making those changes. Listening to our constituents, they're paying the bill. I think we've got to listen to them, and I think we can make for a better Clinton County.
Thank you. That concludes the questions for the candidate forum for the supervisor's position. We'll now allow 1 minute closing statement by each candidate. We'll begin with Mr. Detterman.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber and the Government Affairs Committee for putting this on, and all the citizens watching. It must be tough. My motto is stop raising taxes, and I think I've delivered. My 3 years on the City Council, we lowered the tax levy $1 per thousand. The last 3 years as supervisor, we've lowered the levies over 50 cents per thousand, and we've eliminated there was a $10 head tax for the landfill. That's been eliminated for all the cities. And I also wanted to mention this part-time job. People don't know it. It's 40 to 60 hours a week, this part-time job. I just wanted to mention that. I think I'm the most qualified person to be your county supervisor, so I'm asking for your vote starting October 5th. It's when the absentee ballots go out through Election Day on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown and Mr. Detterman, for participating this evening.
Can I close?
Oh, gosh. I'm so sorry.
That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry. Got ahead of myself. Mr.
Okay.
Brown, please.
I'd like to thank you all for everybody who's helped put this event on tonight. Mr. Moderator and the timekeeper for keeping us on track. And all the other candidates that we've heard tonight for their insight. It's important that we hear it all. I've spent a lot of time in the last few months talking and listening with the good folks all over Clinton County, and it has truly been my pleasure. It's been very interesting and very enjoyable. Throughout these conversations, though, a few common themes emerge over and over. Our county residents want to feel like their voice is heard, and I think that's, we all want that. Whether they're from Wheatland or Lost Nation or Andover, Comanche, they want to know that their elected officials hear what they have to say. They want to be sure that the officials that they elect will always vote what is best for Clinton County and never what serves personal interest or pet projects. That's just a clear message. And mostly they're excited to vote for someone with a fresh, unbiased perspective on how to move Clinton County forward, to promote new businesses and residential growth, and to continue to make Clinton County a wonderful place to live, work, and visit. Please vote for Mike Brown for Supervisor this November. Thank you.
All right, now that does conclude the candidates forum. Again, my apologies, Mr. Brown. Wasn't trying to leave you out there. Thank you both for joining us this evening and for your thoughtful and insightful answers to our questions, and good luck to each of you in the election. I'm very good. How are you? You can take that down. All right, we're now going to move on to the last race for this evening, and that is the sheriff's race. We have two candidates who are running for office, and we have to our right Billy Greenwald, and to our left, my left, Steve Deesh. We will adopt the same procedures that we had for the prior forums. We'll allow each of them to introduce themselves, give them 2 minutes to tell us about their background and experience. Then we'll move on to the candidate questions. Each will have 2 minutes to answer their questions. We'll begin with the opening statements. Mr. Deesh.
Hi, my name is Steve Deesh. I'm running for Clinton County Sheriff. I've lived in Clinton most of my life. Graduated from Clinton High School, moved on to Scott Community College and got an associate's degree. Worked at McElhaney Motors for about 13 years. Been in public service practically my whole entire life. Got married, had a few kids. Joined the Sheriff's Reserves. Got interested in law enforcement and thought that maybe that was something that I'd like to do. Got hired at the Sheriff's Office. Worked in the jail for several years. Went out on patrol for several years where I was a field training officer for both the jail and patrol. I then got promoted to sergeant, assistant jail administrator, ran the jail for a few years, and then I got promoted to chief deputy, and at that time we decided we were going to build a new law center. The bond was passed. So I was in charge of the planning and designing of the new facility, wrote the policies and procedures, and that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. My name is William Greenwald. I'm running for Clinton County Sheriff. A little bit about my background. I started working for the city in public safety at age 16. Started as an animal control officer. Spent about 2 summers doing that. Moved on to a public service officer, the first the city ever had. And then at about age 19, I started and was hired as a police officer at the city of Clinton. I've spent the last 30 years in law enforcement, serving the citizens of Clinton and the county. During that time, I've had the opportunity to work in all facets of law enforcement. Spent my first couple years as a patrol officer, the next couple years as a canine handler, graduated or retired my dog on a Friday afternoon, and went into undercover narcotics for the next 3 years of my life, which I thought was great, only to find out when I got done with that, I went into street crimes and narcotics enforcement again locally. After spending about 7 years of my life working narcotics and street crimes, I was promoted to the rank of corporal, spent several years on the street working as a supervisor. I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, spent several more years out there as a patrol supervisor. Approximately 10 years ago, I was promoted to the rank of captain. And then approximately 4 years ago, I spent the last 4 years of my career as a deputy police chief for the Clinton Police Department. I oversee the Gateway Area Tactical Team, which serves all of Clinton County. I oversee our crisis negotiation unit, the school resource officer team. I'm instrumental in the creation of policy and procedure for our department. I currently oversee the field training program for all of the department. During my career, I'm proud of what I've done for the last 30 years. My efforts didn't go unnoticed by my supervisors. I received 3 awards from the Illinois State Police for my efforts in narcotics enforcement. The U.S. Attorney awarded me a 1999 award for a multi-state drug trafficking investigation. In 2006, I received the CPD Life-Saving Award and a Chief's Award for Achievement. I was also awarded by the Governor's Traffic Safety Commission, the Commissioner of Public Safety's Award for Traffic Safety, my outstanding service traffic safety. Currently oversee the Clinton Police Department as a deputy police chief, 47 sworn officers, and oversee a budget of approximately $6.5 million annually.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to the questions. The first question will be directed towards Mr. Greenwald. Given the current economic environment and the budget constraints in the near future, how will you ensure that there's adequate coverage of deputies in the county to maximize public safety?
Over the last several years, being deeply involved in the budget with the Clinton Police Department, we've been forced to reduce our budget each year. I couldn't tell you exactly how much each year, but it was a challenge to come up with those cuts. I've had the opportunity over the last 5 years, under the leadership of our current police chief here in Clinton, to come up with ideas to assist or to provide the law enforcement services that the citizens of Clinton County or the city of Clinton expect to receive, but doing so in a manner that we've been able to find ways to provide those services using technology. Still providing the same quality service to the citizens, but using different methods and techniques and technology to bring those services to help with those budget cuts that none of us like to see.
Thank you. Mr. Deesh.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. Given the current economic environment and budget constraints, how will you ensure that there's adequate coverage of deputies in the county to maximize public safety?
Well, we currently have a $5.2 million budget, which I have managed for the last 3 years. We were able to manage that budget very well. I was able to turn $500,000 back into the general fund. As far as ensuring that there's adequate coverage for the deputies, right now we currently have adequate staff. I don't see the need that we would need to hire more. I would like to formulate a plan to maybe have some different shift coverages and use the personnel that we have just a little bit better, more strategically for maybe some extra enforcement or undercover enforcement to try to protect the citizens of Clinton County.
Thank you. Mr. Deach, the cost of incarceration continues to increase, and with the new jail, are there alternative programs or policies in lieu of incarceration that you would support or recommend if elected?
Well, there are some current things. They have a drug court in Scott County that Clinton County doesn't have at this time. There are alternatives as far as like some mental health. The biggest issue with the jail is the mental health stuff. If we could try to get some services or have some way for people to help these folks so that they don't end up repeating the vicious cycle of going to jail all the time, I think that we could also bring some programs into the jail so that while they are there, we can maybe teach them, have Iowa workforce come in, teach them how to write job resumes and applications, fill out applications, so we can educate them a little bit better so that they quit the cycle of coming back forth to jail.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald.
Could you repeat that question for me, please?
Absolutely. The cost of incarceration continues to increase. Are there alternative programs or policies in lieu of incarceration that you would support or recommend if elected?
Yes. We know the cost of incarceration is very taxing on the budget and the taxpayers of this county, and we have to do everything in our power to reduce the cost and the expenses associated with incarceration. I attend meetings with the Clinton County Justice Coordinating Commission. During those meetings, there's members from all facets of the court, from citizens to law enforcement to lawmakers, and in those meetings, we discuss regularly options and alternatives to incarceration. I think everybody is fully aware that one of the biggest issues we face as a society and law enforcement is to do with mental health and the drug crisis. And so many times we're dealing with the same people over and over, and most of those people are dealing with mental health crises or drug crises in their life, and incarceration is not the answer. We work closely with adult probation, and have discussed the feasibility of getting a drug court in Clinton County. Unfortunately, right now, the courts are unable to fund that or staff that at this time. But I think alternative sanctions are something we definitely have to look at. But again, it's all funding. And I'm proud to say that we've been working with the Clinton County Justice Coordinating Commission for years, and there's a great team in there that work monthly and meet many times throughout the year, all trying to find ways to reduce the rate of incarceration and keep people out of jail. We certainly don't want to criminalize mental health, and we want to get those that need the help for their drug addiction to keep them out of jail and get them treatment and get them back to be a productive member of society.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald, how do you envision the relationship between the county sheriff's department, the city police department, and other departments in the area, including the county attorney and the court system, and what would you do to maintain that relationship?
That's a great question, and I think one of the most important things is communications. We've personally witnessed, everybody's witnessed across this country, across this world, probably one of the biggest breakdowns that we have is communications. And I think communications, I heard candidates talking about this earlier, collaboration, we have to work together to achieve the goals we set out. Nobody has a budget in 2020 to all buy the equipment they need. We need to work together to share this equipment. I've been participating in an organization known as Gateway Area Police Administrators as a deputy chief for nearly 4 years. And prior to that, I've attended that meeting for probably 4 years before that. And it brings all the administrators from Clinton, Comanche, DeWitt, and the county sheriff's office together. We've joined as a team. We all use the same records management system. That records management system was over $250,000. For each agency to have their own records management system would be absurd. And this Gateway Area Police Administrators have worked together to find ways to collaborate and communicate to share resources, equipment, staffing. I touched earlier on the fact that I am the commander of the Gateway Area Special Response Team, which serves the entire county. It's a tactical operations team that's comprised of approximately 25 law enforcement officers. The equipment that they use on a regular basis and that they train with is extremely expensive. A ballistic vest that one of these officers wear is nearly $3,000. We have to work together. We have to share resources. None of our budgets, whether it's the City of Clinton, City of Comanche, City of DeWitt, or Clinton County, can continue to take the hits that we've been taking. So I would say that I would work hard to continue a positive relationship with all the agencies and law enforcement, and it goes beyond law enforcement. We got to work with our elected officials, our lawmakers, everyone, to make sure that we work together and use the taxpayer money to the best of our abilities and not have redundant services in a community our size.
Thank you. Mr. Deesh.
Could you rephrase the question, please?
Certainly. How do you envision the relationship between the county sheriff's department, the city police department, and other departments in the area, including the county attorney and the court system? And what will you do to maintain that relationship?
We have a very good working relationship with all of the law enforcement agencies in Clinton County at this time. We assist DeWitt Police Department daily, along with the Comanche Police Department. We do work in the city of Clinton. We're in here when they had their shooting or their stabbing. The county is always the first guys that show up to back these guys up. So we do have a really well relationship with those at this time. And I would just like to continue to reach out, have some open conversations and on things that we could do better as far as working together. I've been part of that strategic response team for 15 years myself, so I have worked with those guys in the tactical situations. When we had our deputy that got shot at the other night, the response team came out, everybody worked together. We had people from the patrol, we had Jackson County, the troopers, we had EMA, we had a plane up in the air, so everybody worked together very well that day. Luckily, nothing happened to our officers. and everything turned out very well. So I would continue to work as we've been working. I'm also a member of the Gateway Area Police Association. I've been attending those meetings also, and we have a real good working relationship with the police department, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Deesh, following up on that, what do you see as the most significant challenges for law enforcement and the Sheriff's Department in the next 5 years, and what will you do to address those challenges?
Well, first of all, budget issues are going to be the challenges. I see the tax bases dwindling here in Clinton, so we're going to have to be very cognizant of what we spend on our budget. We're going to have to work very hard to continue to provide the services that we've been providing. There are some opportunities for the Sheriff's Office to maybe bring in a little bit of revenue through some inmate housing for other counties through the jail. We built this new facility. I want to plan on using that to try to maybe fund some of the stuff for the Sheriff's Office, and just be real cognizant of what we're doing on a daily basis, and try to run the office with honesty and integrity, make sure that we're following through with what we set out to do. I'd like to get some unmarked squad cars out in the county, maybe work on the drug interdiction and some of the stuff that's going on throughout the city of Clinton and the county as well.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald.
I hate to ask you, but could you repeat that one time for me?
I'd be happy to. What do you see as the most significant challenges to law enforcement and the Sheriff's Department in the next 5 years, and how, if elected, how will you address those challenges?
Well, I think some of the biggest challenges we're going to face are the financial constraints. 2020 has been a very challenging year for law enforcement and every other part of communities. I think budgets are going to be something that we have yet to feel the full effect of the last couple of years. The loss of revenue throughout the county during this COVID. There's so many things that I think we're going to experience that are going to have a significant impact and a negative impact on our budget, and I'm sure that's to come in the next year or two. I think I am confident in saying that two of the major issues that we face in all of Clinton County and across the country, especially at the law enforcement level, are the drug epidemic and the mental health crisis. Unfortunately, law enforcement are forced to deal with that earlier. I heard one of the other candidates discussing the fact when we deal with mental health, it's very difficult for us. One of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to criminalize mental health. We don't want to fill the jail up with those that are mentally ill, because it's going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. We got to get them treatment. We got to find ways. We got to work with our state legislators. We got to work with the elected officials. We got to educate the elected officials what we see on the streets to help address that major issue of mental health. The next is the drug crisis. This isn't something that affects Clinton County alone. It's all over the country. The government has thrown millions and billions and billions of dollars at drug enforcement, and we still have a lot of drugs in our community. Unfortunately, drugs have such an impact on citizens. It's the direct result of most burglaries, criminal activities, assaults, thefts, forgeries. So much of those crimes are directly related to the drug epidemic, and we have to do more. I worked undercover for 4 years. I spent 7 years of my life working narcotics, and I vow to continue dedicating the additional resources and partner back with the Black Hawk Area Task Force to try our hardest to get some of the drug problem under control. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I think I can solve Clinton County's drug problem, but I can tell you I've got the experience and the dedication and work ethic to work hard on that. Lastly, I think is community relations. 2020 has given us a lot of challenges, and one of them is community relations as law enforcement. We have to get out. We have to interact with the citizens. We have to be transparent. We have to earn the trust, and the only way that we can earn the trust of the citizens is actually getting out there as law enforcement leaders, meeting with the people, explaining to them what we do, educate them what we do, why we do what we do, and work hard to make sure that we remain a transparent agency and yet provide the best service to Clinton County that we can.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald, recently there's a new jail that was constructed, and part of that was because of requirements, new requirements and regulations. Now that we have the new jail, has it made the job any more efficient? Has it increased manpower hours? And what changes, if any, to the jail management and staffing would you make if elected?
The jail was definitely needed. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years and spent many nights in that jail that was formerly there. We certainly needed a new jail. Now, I know the taxpayers of Clinton County voted to bond referendum through to spend $22 million in the jail. Obviously, that's exceeded that a little bit. I'm concerned with the amount of money that's gone into that jail. I will also say that, I, as a law enforcement officer, have concerns about our ability to get people in the jail right now. However, I understand that with COVID, there has to be restrictions. It's not isolated to Clinton, but we absolutely have to deter our criminals. We didn't build a jail to issue citations. We didn't build a jail to not utilize it to its fullest potential. I know that we have to look at alternative sanctions. We don't want to fill the jail unnecessarily. But I also think the taxpayers made a big commitment to Clinton County when they voted to spend $22 million to build this jail. And unfortunately, like right now, given COVID and a few other situations, we've got offenders out there in the streets that will tell law enforcement officers, you can't take me to jail, you have to give me a ticket. And it's frustrating. And I'll tell you, I speak for a lot of the law enforcement officers that work the streets, that are giving up their nights and their days and putting their lives on the line every day to keep our streets safe. And we want to get those people in the jail. I respect the fact that we don't want to get people in the jail sick, but I think we need to work hard to find a way to use that jail to its fullest potential. I know that there's approximately 21 staff employed by the jail, approximately 15 corrections officers, 3 or 4 sworn officers, and 1 jail secretary. I'm not working in that jail right now, but I can assure you, with my hard work and 30 years experience, if I'm elected sheriff in November, I will get in there and I will find out what we can do to improve the efficiency and operations in that jail and work to make that a deterrent for criminals in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Deesh.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. Recently, county constructed a new jail. Has it created issues in the department? Has it required additional manpower and hours? And if so, how's it impacted shift patrol? What changes would you make if elected?
Well, right now with the COVID going on, the new jail has kind of been limited as far as what we can do in there. If we get COVID in the jail, we'll have to shut it down completely, and we won't be able to accept any inmates whatsoever, at least for the 14-day period. This is throughout the state of Iowa and all of the county jails, and including the prison system. We have to make appointments to get in there. We have to have COVID tests. It isn't that the sheriff's office doesn't want to take or get these criminals off the street. It's the fact that we're just trying to keep the COVID out of the jail at this time. There are a lot of situations where, there's a lot of situations where we need to work on bringing people to jail and how we're going to go about doing that as the time moves on. There are several, with the new jail, we have a medical cell so we can isolate up to 3 people in the medical cell. We have 10 cells in the booking area, so we can isolate it that way. But the problem is once we get them in there and they stay, once the judge sees them, we have to keep them isolated, and it's hard to fill the jail. We had to build the new jail because we accepted everybody before, and we were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars out of county tax dollars to fund that, and we still want to bring people to jail. We just have to be cognizant of the COVID that's in there and not get that.
Thank you. All right, last question. What do you think distinguishes you from your opponent and why? Mr. Deesh.
I've been at the sheriff's office my entire career. I've been there for 23 years. I've worked my way through the jail. I've worked my way through patrol. I've moved into administration. I've run the jail for several years. I helped plan and build the new jail, and we will continue to strive to make that a better place. I've been involved in the budget. We have a $5.2 million budget. We have 57 employees at the sheriff's office. I just drew a blank. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yep. What do you feel distinguishes you from your opponent and why?
Just that I have the working knowledge of the sheriff's office. I know the county. I know the residents of the county. I've worked my whole career there. I'm not much of a politician. I'm more of a worker bee. I struggle with these kind of interviews and questions to get up and speak in front of a crowd. I'm really nervous today, and I'm sure that it shows. I will do my best to provide the best and efficient sheriff's office that I can.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald.
And could I ask you to repeat that for me?
Yeah, what do you feel distinguishes you from your opponent and why?
I think my experience, not to take away from my opponent's experience, but I've got 30 years of tried and tested experience. I've served in every aspect of law enforcement. I've been in management for 10 years. I oversee a $6.5 million budget that I pride myself on. I've never exceeded. I'm known amongst my law enforcement peers as one of the tightest individuals they've met. I receive calls from different departments within the community asking me how to find equipment, services at the reduced rates that I do. I'm hardworking. Anybody that's been around me will tell you that I don't slow down. I think a lot of it is experience. I don't want to take the time to go through every school I've ever been to, but I command multiple teams. I'm the commander of the SRT team. I'm the commander of the crisis negotiation team. I command the school resource officer team. I'm the training coordinator. I coordinate special events for this community. I'm instrumental in every event that occurs in the last 5 years that is of any size, coordinating the traffic control, the safety approaches, the civil unrest. I think my experience and my work ethic separate me from my opponent. Not to take away, I've been a successful grant writer. I'm always looking for ways to fund equipment and training for the men and women that work daily to keep everybody safe, to provide them with the best equipment. I've written over 20 successful grants. My efforts have been acknowledged by both state, local, and federal agencies. And I just pride myself in my hard work, and I think my ability to communicate. I'm not afraid to talk with anybody. Most law enforcement officers that have worked with me never want to work a special event with me because they know I want to get out and talk to people, and they get tired of standing around talking to people. They want to keep moving. So most officers would tell you they never want to work an event with me. So I just think it's my experience and my personality that would make me a great sheriff and serve the citizens of Clinton County in the future. I can assure the citizens of Clinton County, if elected sheriff in November, you will not be disappointed. I will be in the county on a daily basis. I will not be in the office as much as possible. I will be out of that office trying to listen to the citizens and find out what their desires are, work with other elected officials, and it goes all back to communications and collaboration, which I think I am a good communicator.
Thank you. That concludes the question portion, and probably that last question probably was somewhat of a closing statement, but nevertheless, we're going to allow each of you 1 minute to make a closing statement, even if you repeat yourself. So, Mr. Deesh.
Yeah, I believe that I'm the best candidate for this Clinton County Sheriff, although it doesn't look like today with this session here. I'm very nervous. I've worked at the Sheriff's Office my entire career, moved up through the ranks. I've run the budget for the last 3 years very well. We've turned money back in for the last few years. I believe that I'm well qualified. I want to implement some undercover stuff to work on the drug addiction stuff, drug task. I'd like to get together with the other local agencies, DeWitt, Clinton, and Comanche, and see if we couldn't get an interoperative part of a drug, like a task force, but not a task force that goes over to Illinois and works. I want to specifically focus on the stuff in Clinton and Clinton County and work on it that way. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald.
I don't want to use the word opponent because he's a friend. We've been friends for a lot of years and work together well. And I want to continue to work with the neighboring agencies. I also am new to politics. I've never. Over the years, I've always thought about considering running for sheriff. My dad worked for the sheriff's department for over 25 years and retired several years ago and had passed. Before my dad passed, my father had passed away. He and I had conversations, and I assured him at some point in my life I was going to run for sheriff. With the retirement of Sheriff Lincoln, I think this is an opportune time. I think with all my experience, my hard work, my dedication, and some of the other assets I bring to the table, I think I would make an outstanding sheriff for Clinton County. I'd be remiss, I didn't do this in the opening statements. My wife, my family, my daughter, my mother, my in-laws, I got to thank everybody. Politics is, like my friend, I will say, neither one of us are probably politicians. We're more of law enforcement officers, and it's been challenging for us, but it's been fun. And I just want to thank everybody for their patience with us and taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deesh, Mr. Greenwald, for participating this evening and for your thoughtful answers to the questions and insight. We appreciate that, and good luck to both of you in the election.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'd also like to say thank you to the Clinton Chamber for hosting this event, to the City of Clinton for allowing us to use their facilities, MAC 94.7 and KCLN 1390 for streaming and remind you that we will have an event
Next Thursday night, 7 o'clock p.m. in DeWitt at the Community Center. Same bat time, different bat station. So if you'd like to hear some more questions and answers from the candidates, plan to be there. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.